Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My guest tonight is Judge Carlyn Addison. She is the judge in Shelby County Criminal Court, Division 5. Welcome, Judge Addison.
Thank you for having me back. Last time I was with you was when I was running. So it turned
Yes.
out our way. Thank you so much for everything you do to keep everyone informed on Meet the Candidates. So now you could just change it to say Meet the Judge.
Right. I just saw that and I was like, I'm going to have to fix that. but again, everybody, I am your host, Camila Turner, and this is Let's Chat with Camila T. And Meet the Candidates is what I started doing during the last election cycle because there were so many people on the ballot. There were a lot of judges, and these positions are important, and people need to know who they're voting for because they go before these people when they have critical life issues. And I thought it would be a good idea to start bringing people on to talk to me about what they do and why their position is important in our community. So, Judge Addison is the judge in Criminal Court 5, which is domestic violence court. And as we know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we are both wearing purple. I have on a purple jacket. Judge Addison has on a purple shirt and bracelet and necklace and earrings. Yes. So to start off, Judge Addison, explain to the listeners what is domestic violence. What makes domestic violence different from just regular violence or assault?
Okay, so domestic violence can break down into two different categories, and I want to kind of explain it. Like, say, for instance, Ms. Turner, you and I are roommates, and we fight over a can of Coke. And if we have that fight because we're roommates under the law, it would be domestic violence. But say, for instance, my partner and I, my intimate partner and I have a situation that results in some sort of violence. That's intimate partner violence. So you have domestic violence that's not intimate, and then you have domestic violence that is, and that's what I focus on in Criminal Court Division 5. It can be complicated when you try to explain the two different ways that domestic violence is viewed in the legal system, but it can be, as far as intimate partner violence is concerned, sexual, physical, financial, emotional. There are so many different layers to intimate partner violence that people don't understand or appreciate. That's what I deal with Monday through Friday. And quite frankly, on the weekends when I'm called by law enforcement to help.
So what about people who live together that are related but are not intimate partners, not only roommates, but they're related, like sister and brother?
I won't get that.
Okay. Is that considered domestic?
No, it has to be. When you look at a file in Criminal Court Division 5, as you know, you come look at the file, you open it, it's stamped IPV. Intimate partner violence. Okay. That is a current or former intimate partner or spouse. That's someone you've had a relationship with, more than likely, someone you were married to, someone you were dating, someone you may have just known for a night. It's intimacy that changes the definition and what I hear.
And what you hear.
Yes.
Right. And just so that we're clear, there are other types of domestic violence.
Sure.
But as far as what you hear, it's intimate partner violence.
Intimate partner.
So what kinds of people are involved? I think we have an idea of income levels and professionals versus people who are not. Like, what kinds of people have these issues?
All. We don't have an idea. We would like to think that it is a certain segment of our population that are just unhinged, unable to control their emotions, unable to take no for an answer, or we think it's one type of population, one gender, one race, one ethnicity, and it's not. It runs from every side, from the lowest of poverty to the richest of the rich. People are victimized. 1 in 4 women find themselves experiencing intimate partner violence in their lifetime. No, 1 in 3, strike that. 1 in 3 women. That's 33 and a third, right?
Wow.
1 in 4 men experience intimate partner violence. And I'm often struck by victims when they come in, because they don't always look as what we've seen on TV. I mean, let's just take it way back to the 90s. O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown Simpson, even though he was found not guilty, we're talking about millionaires. We're talking about millionaire people living in Brentwood, California, who had experienced some level of domestic violence. And the same can happen in Brentwood, that can happen in, say, Mitchell Heights, say South Memphis. Everyone can be affected by domestic violence.
So one of the things that throughout my legal career that is frustrating for everybody involved, for defense lawyers, for prosecutors, for judges, is that a lot of times, a great deal of times, you have a victim, someone who has truly been victimized, that says, you know what, never mind. I don't want to go forward with this. It didn't happen. I made it up, even though my eyeball is hanging out, my face, and I got, you know what I mean?
Right.
So what are some ways to deal with that? Can the state go forward anyway? Do they?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Let's start here. Victims don't press charges. As you and I both know, victims don't press charges. It's the state of Tennessee versus John Doe. And I spoke to one of the domestic violence officers here recently during one of our trials, and he said it takes at least 5 to 6 calls to a situation, a responder, for that victim, that complainant, to say, enough's enough. They don't often respond the first time. They don't often respond the second time. So if you consider the fact that this has happened 5 or 6 times before someone is willing to go forward, and then you have to also think about, I'm losing money from my home. This is how I know love to be. We just fought. This is an underappreciation of the grave harm that you place yourself in. And I get that. And we see it frankly more than we would like to. But we understand that this is the cycle of violence that people are used to. And consider this, you spent some time in juvenile court. Many people have grown up in homes exposed to domestic violence where this type of behavior was normal. My mom and dad had fought. Oh, we just fight. And they're unwilling to recognize, and it's hurtful to them, that they are victims. Who wants to be a victim? Who wants to acknowledge that this person I love, this, the child that is sitting next to me is the fruit of sexual violence? Or who wants to truly understand and appreciate how bad their situation is? So I don't fault victims when there's a repeated cycle of violence, even if their eyeball is hanging out, because what we're trying to do as victims, just putting myself there, is survive. So it's complicated in that we know what you're going through. We know you're going to come back. We just hope it's not in a body bag. Truly.
Right. I had a case. I actually went to trial on a case. It was a domestic violence situation, and the state actually went and arrested the accuser, the victim, because she had made so many complaints over the years, and this was something, that was continuous. And they said, no, we are going forward, and we're going to force you to come to court and testify, or, we can file charges against you for filing a false report. If you're saying that, this didn't happen, of course, that didn't have to happen. But they essentially made her testify in that trial.
And that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You want victims to have a voice. You want victims to feel heard, but you also don't want anyone to continue to manipulate and burden our system. We don't know what's the truth until you get on that stand. And we don't know how to take it. Now, I'm not an advocate for, and I'm not saying it won't ever happen in my career, and I won't say it hasn't, but I'm not an advocate for the re-traumatization of a victim. There are many reasons why victims, complainants don't want to show up. They may be scared. They may be lying. We won't know unless and until they do present themselves to court and they're placed under oath. That is I haven't seen it much in my career, but I know that it happens.
So are there resources for victims and also resources for abusers through the courts, through the communities? And what are those?
Okay, so for victims, you have the YWCA. You have the Women's Advocacy Center. There are some programs with Deborah Club. She was involved with the Exchange Club for a long time. They changed the name to Kindred Place. Love Doesn't Hurt 901, which specializes in the LGBTQ community. Restore Corps, great resource. Here's the catch, though. It's sexual trafficking and it's victim of sexual exploitation. But what people don't realize is sometimes the predators in those victims, the predators who prey on the victims of sexual exploitation can be an intimate partner. So there are many resources here locally for sure. If one finds themselves a victim of intimate partner violence, the Shelby County Attorney General's office, especially in my courtroom, has victim advocates. And these people work diligently night and day with resources, community linkage, stakeholders to make certain that they can bring everyone together to keep families together, not necessarily the abuser, but the victims and their children or their grandparents or whoever's involved in that home. So we have safety nets for victims. Now, as it relates to people accused of abuse, yes, we have batterer intervention programs, domestic violence assessment. I have been referring a lot of people because what you'll find is a lot of gun play in these situations. The city of Memphis has the Gun Violence Initiative Program, GVIP, GVIP. Just on yesterday, I had Memphis Allies in Criminal Court 5 assisting with the case. There are programs available. We have tools in the toolbox. We need to use them. So yes, we have help on both sides because quite frankly, if you come in once as a victim or a defendant, I do not want to see you back. And I'm going to throw everything I can at you to make certain that you're okay, you're safe, or you don't harm again.
So you have been on the bench, I believe, a year and a month. Did you start September of 2022?
Yes, I just had my anniversary.
Yes.
Well, this bench.
Oh, right. Of course, you're a juvenile court person.
Yes.
Court.
This is if it's 2023, this is maybe, I don't even know what year on the bench, but prior to, yes, I was a juvenile court bench and then I was environmental court bench. So this has been quite a 13 months.
Yeah. So how is it different from being in juvenile court or environmental court?
Okay. So I'm going to just take it to my most recent legal experience. You've spent a good deal of time down in juvenile court. You know what we see that we can't talk about because we're dealing with kids. Right. What I see now, and you'd be amazed, even in those 13 months, how many children I have seen in criminal court, whether it be from the truancy docket, the delinquency docket, or the dependency and neglect docket. You know as well as I do that one of the many bases for removing a child on a dependency and neglect docket is exposure to domestic violence. So what I'm seeing is where the problem starts, because it's going to end up down the street. Or if I saw it down the street, it's going to mature its way to me. You know, literally in like the first week on the bench, I saw a kid and was like, how your daddy doing? Because I'd spent so much time with him and his family at juvenile court. And I was like, you recognize me? Yes, ma'am. You know, so I don't want to say it's the same, but we see how it starts. It starts when our babies are exposed, and it starts when families are broken up, and it starts at the lack of foundation, the lack of accountability, the lack of responsibility, the lack of tools, resources, finances. This is where it starts. And we want to hold our adults accountable because our babies are watching.
Yes. So I represented adults much longer in my career than children, most recently representing children. But I see things and I'm like, oh no, we have to deal with this right now because I know where this is heading. I know exactly where it's heading, and let's do everything. And that's why I like juvenile court so much, because the goal is rehabilitation, and everybody's working towards rehabilitation and not punishment, because I know what the punishment is going to look like. And I know
the punishment is not going to look like what's in that building. The punishment is going to look like what's in society. So
what do you mean?
Think about, as a child, exposure to domestic violence, you're caught up in this juvenile system. We do our best to give you everything you can as far as services, but maybe they don't work. You get out of the juvenile system, and now you're introduced into the adult system. Right. That's what I mean by society.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I look at a 19-year-old in criminal court and say, you realize that you're going to be a felon. You won't be able to vote. You won't be able to enjoy the same blah, blah, blah. And they're just looking at me like, I'm sorry, what? And I see it so much because we don't always address the issue when we can. And society is going to treat that child different. That child might not finish high school. That child might not have a home to go to. That child, you and I both know, may be in foster care over and over and over and over again. So it's not limited to what we do at 201. It's not limited to what people do at 616 Adams. It's society and how we receive these people, these children, when they're out.
So one of the things, and this is not particular to domestic violence cases, but in general, people are surprised by how many cases settle, meaning don't go to a trial, don't go to a jury trial or to a bench trial, but settle because of some type of agreement that is made. What would you say, if you know the percentages, or how often do cases settle in front of you, and why do you think that is?
Oh, I can give you some numbers.
Okay.
Data. When I took the bench on 9/1/2022, I was provided with a list of about 50 plus trials set by my predecessor. Of those 50 plus, it was either 52 or 56. I don't want to marry a number, but it was over 50. Of those 50 set, by the time I looked back on 9/1/2023, only 4 of them had gone to trial.
Wow.
Do the math on that. Even if you use a bottom line 50 number, only 4 of them had gone to trial. Many of those due to settlement negotiations, many of those due to unwilling or uncooperative witnesses and victims. It wasn't all either side's fault. It wasn't the prosecutor's fault. It wasn't, the state's fault of not producing the witnesses. It wasn't the defense's fault. It was a myriad of issues why I couldn't have these cases. I tried. And I have instituted a very unpopular policy of no longer accepting guilty pleas on trial day. I set it for trial. It's going to go. I know
Yeah,
what you're
that's
thinking.
very defense attorneys don't like that.
It's not, but this is not pro defense. This is pro justice.
No. Oh, I completely understand, but you know, sometimes you get your best deal.
Well,
on
see,
trial
I'm not here
in
for
the morning of
negotiation because
trial.
Miss Turner, let's be clear. You have the right to plead not guilty, and you have the right to a jury trial. You
Absolutely.
do not have a right to plead guilty. So when we set this for trial, it will go. You will not use Criminal Court Division 5 as a negotiation tool.
Well, that's not always our initial intent. I won't get too far into that, but you know,
but we digress. We digress
for your clients.
We digress. I'm just telling you, but most of the times, yes, it's difficult to put on a case when you don't have what you need. And I understand that and I get it. And let's not forget the elephant in the room. If you were a victim in 2020 when COVID broke, and then we shut down and things started moving slower and slower and slower, you know, this is a transient community. The state might not be able to find their victim. The state might not be able to find the defendant. So we have to be mindful of all of these really different things that come into play on why a trial cannot go forward. And I'm not a monster. If it's a true issue and you have to bring something to the court and say, hey, this is what's happening and this is why it's happening, I'm not here to force anyone to prove a burden that they can't meet. But I am here to give victims voices. I encourage anyone that complains about any domestic violence issue, come to court. This is your day. You have the same constitutional rights as a defendant.
Well, what are some of your lessons from the bench and advice to people who have cases on the docket? I always tell people just very basic things like show up to court on your court date. You know, I don't know if there
are about lawyers or defendants.
Oh my goodness, are lawyers not showing up too? On any given day in any given courtroom, there are at least 5+ people that just do not come to court for whatever reason. And you know, it's so much harder because if there's a warrant issue, then you have to try to get the warrant recalled and you might end up going to jail. But come to court and look like you're going to court. And not necessarily wear a 3-piece suit, but not like you're going to the basketball court to shoot.
Again, you've given me a loaded question I got to deal with, and I got to peel back these layers. You know, everyone, you know, back when I was a PD, they had put out a list and said, public defender, they put out a list to give to our clients, and it said something to the effect of dress like you're going to church. Well, everybody don't go to church, so that's unfair. Right. And then they're like, okay, no spaghetti straps. What if that's all I have? Okay, well, you need to be in court at 9. I'm taking MATA transit. I've got to do 5 exchanges. I've got to get the bus fare to get there. So I encourage people, because I start court on time.
You start court at 9 o'clock?
No, ma'am. I get on the bench at 8:45. I open at 8:58. Okay. We call the docket at 9. Because I don't want to take up anyone's time. Your time is just as precious as mine. You don't lose your humanity because you're on my docket. And I certainly don't want to keep victims, complainants waiting until I feel good about showing up. I'm going to do everything I can to be on time. There are times, like I think I started at 9:15 yesterday. Everyone was upset. I won't make that mistake again. But I understand that we have to be mindful of childcare issues, poverty issues, transportation issues, homelessness. And I think that it's my background as a public defender that makes me understand and appreciate everyone can't be. You're not going to call that whole docket at 9, but do your level best to be there. I don't take warrants at 9. I take warrants at the end of the docket. So you've got a good 3 to 4 hour window before I start my hearings at 1 to get to court. I'm not unfair, and I get it. And a lot of people, who wants to come to 201 on purpose? And to your point, some lawyers don't. So I just encourage anyone with anything at 201 to be on time, be punctual, do your best. If you don't have a 3-piece suit, cover up. We don't want to see all of that. Pull your pants up, wear a belt. If all you own is a tank top, there are people who will help you get a jacket to put on to address the court. Contact your lawyer, contact whoever you think you can, your probation officer, the victims advocate coordinator, somebody. Because truly, I think 201 should be a place to help, not hurt.
Well, what have you learned? I know you've learned a lot, but share a couple of things you've learned in the past 13 months.
I didn't realize, and so many criminal court judges make this work look easy. It's difficult work. You bring it home. Some of the more seasoned judges will say, hey, don't take a file home. And, they know what they're doing. But some of us are there late into the night. Some of us are there on the weekends. It's more than just putting on a robe and sitting on the bench. You've got law enforcement calling you 365, 24/7. You're at your kid's birthday party and you've got to go somewhere to swear out a warrant. You've got to be very present. And I don't mind at all. They know where to find me. They know where I live. It's a lot of work, but it's good work. It's impactful. When you truly care about this job, you truly care about doing it right. And I think that's not that I never cared about any of my other jobs. Let's be very clear. But when you want to do it right, you'll do it right. And you'll give it 110% because that's what we asked for. You asked for this job, show up for it and do it. And that's my commitment to everyone on either side.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. And hopefully
you got a cup coming.
Yes, I appreciate that. Everyone, again, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you are not a victim yourself, you probably know someone else who is or has been a victim or an abuser. So everybody's affected by it in some way.
So can I add to your,
yes.
That's a great point. Let me just give me this moment to say that if you see something, say something. Love does not hurt. It's difficult to remove yourself from a situation. There are tools, there are resources. Tell a friend, find a safe place. You may not even realize you're a victim. And that, to be clear, I've seen just as many women defendants as I have men. And people do not talk about that enough. Of the 6 murder cases I had this calendar year, at least 3 of them were women.
Wow.
Women defendants. And there were men who may have or may not felt safe enough to come forward or to say, this is what's happening to me. If you see something, say something. Please don't discount it. The life you save could be your very own or your loved one. Don't ignore the red flags.
Well, I think that's a very good closing point. Do not ignore the red flags. Judge Addison, thank you so much again for joining me. Thank you to everybody for watching. Please don't forget to like and share. And until next time.